Welcome to When Laid Off Paid Off, Redundancy Success Stories. Coming up in this episode.
Some days were becoming really unproductive and my confidence had taken a big knock, which was a hard cycle to break when job applications need you to be selling yourself.
Recognise that asking for help is not that straightforward. And I think that we see a lot of headlines at the moment, don't we? Of like, go and talk to someone, go and ask for help. But it's just not that simple.
Thank you for watching When Laid Off Paid Off, the show about providing positive stories and lessons to find the silver lining if you're struggling with the challenges and uncertainty of redundancy. I'm Batchelor, and I'm a presenter, producer, and TEDx curator. And I'm on a mission to help people find and express their purpose and passion so that they can find and do the work that they love. This episode is brought to you in partnership with Another Door. This episode comes from retail manager Liz Flynn, who found the hard way that no matter how much we prepare, things don't always go to plan. However, from this negative experience, she was given the opportunity to learn more about the breadth of her skills and career opportunities, as well as learning not to take rejection so personally. Later in the show, we'll also hear from Eleanor Tweddell, redundancy mentor at Another Door, and author of Why Losing Your Job Could Be the Best Thing That Ever Happened to You. She'll be sharing with us her insight in how to break the negative cycle of low confidence and how to find the courage to ask for help. But first, let's hear Liz's story, which is read by voiceover artist Suze Cooper.
I'm currently the general manager for an e-commerce and high street retailer. I'm responsible for the overall running of 2 sites and the HR and well-being of 25 staff. I wasn't made redundant, but I was in a situation where I felt forced to leave. A few years ago, I was working for a company in a relatively safe and steady position. I'd been there a while and there were even opportunities to progress, but I'd started to feel restless for a change. The work had started to get a little predictable, so I was wondering I should maybe do something else. I'm a very risk-averse person by nature, so it was hard to wrestle with this idea, and I couldn't help but feel I was being a bit fanciful about what else was out there, and that I should just be grateful for what I had at the time. But I was also in my late 20s, and I had a feeling that if I didn't go, I might stay there forever, and that also didn't feel good either. It still took me a really long time, months, to work out what I wanted to do and talk myself up to leaving. And when I eventually found an incredibly exciting opportunity, I felt like I was at the end of this big journey and that I'd done all the hard bit already. How wrong I was. Sadly, within weeks of being at the new job, I knew I'd made a huge mistake. Some crucial information about the role hadn't been disclosed prior to me taking it, and without going into details, we had fundamentally different opinions that was going to make staying impossible. Think small crime. And so I made the decision to leave, even though I had nothing else to go to. Well, I felt marginally relieved to be out of the new job situation, which had caused me a lot of stress in a short amount of time, but I was also terrified to be taking this jump. I had rent and bills to pay, and my savings had been heavily chipped into a few months earlier when I had some work done on my car, so I didn't have much of a safety net beneath me. I think I'd always prided myself on my good work ethic too, so a lot of how I felt about myself and my mental health was tied into the idea that I was independent and not reliant on anyone else, so I was really concerned that I might have to ask anyone else for help. My other concern was what I was actually going to do next. At the time, not a lot of employers were recruiting, so suitable jobs were hard to come by, and even then there was a lot of competition. It was hard to stand out. I guess I just felt really adrift. It was hard to make any plans because I didn't know where I was going or when my next paycheck would be coming in. I think work is a big part of your identity too. It's not everything, obviously, but there is a lot that work provides: contact with people throughout the day, a routine, a sense of purpose, goals to achieve. Sometimes it's not just about earning. Not working can also massively rock your boat in other ways too. It was emotionally a really challenging time. I had unsuccessfully applied for a few jobs and was starting to feel the impact of that, both financially and also within myself. Some days were becoming really unproductive and my confidence had taken a big knock, which was a hard cycle to break when job applications need you to be selling yourself. I decided I needed a break from staring at the screen, so figured doing anything would be better than nothing. I volunteered to help a friend with an event they were organising and then worked for a very small fee for someone else. It was physically hard work and didn't financially really make much sense. I was working for far less than minimum wage once I'd accounted for petrol, but it did get me out and about. It got me achieving things again, talking to people and thinking about opportunities. I also started telling people what had happened, and this gave me moral support. Even though I was still refusing help, everyone I told was sympathetic, and some started sending me links to jobs. Even if they weren't suitable, it felt good to not be so alone in the situation. Other people had also been through similar things, and their experiences helped push me forward too. There was absolutely no way that just a few months before, when I was at my steady job, that I would have considered freelancing. But that is what I ended up doing. It was partly out of desperation, but also because I had very little to lose, and at least by freelancing, I could regain some sense of control about the situation. So I worked out what I could offer a company, emailed as many people as I could, advertising my availability, and then took any work going. Sometimes I was effectively office temping. Other times I was organising large-scale events, which was my background. I kept my rates competitive. I probably undersold myself for a while, but on the upside it meant work kept coming in, and that got me out of a bad financial position. I wasn't precious about staying at the level I'd been working at before, and I didn't care what work I did. I needed money, and that became my only objective. In the end, I freelanced for 2 years until an opportunity came up that I couldn't resist applying for, and I was offered the position. By that time, I'd managed to refine what I did, and I was no longer having to take any job going. Looking back on it, my time spent freelancing was an incredible opportunity, but I was also glad that it came to an end. Being self-employed can be incredibly tiring, and there's a lot to be said for working for someone and not having to solve all the IT and the payroll and HR problems yourself. Before this happened, I had a really rigid mindset to qualifications, skills, experiences. There were so many jobs I would never have considered applying for just because I hadn't done anything like that before, so why would anyone hire me? Part of the reason I'd felt like the job market was so limited is because at the beginning I kept looking for what was safe and familiar and what I could be confident at. But I forgot the key bit, that the skills I used in my job were transferable. I could write clear emails, I could organise information and explain it to someone else. I could make notes and write them up. It didn't really matter if I had a lot of experience in the job or not, because no one expects you to understand everything from day one. So as long as I listened, tried, asked for help when necessary and worked hard, that was pretty much all that was needed. Obviously, I'm talking about doing certain office jobs. More specialised work does need qualifications and experience. So as well as thinking more broadly about what skills I could offer a team, I also changed how I applied for jobs. I stopped worrying about my CV, the forms, the interviews. In some ways, the less I worried about my experience, the more I focused on what else I could offer. My ability to learn fast, my enthusiasm for achieving tasks, the fact I'm a hard worker. I also stopped taking rejection so personally. I could see how the jobs I didn't get were usually a bad fit anyway. Of course, it was still a bit disheartening, but I kept my eye on the bigger picture and held hope that it would work out in the end. Lastly, my attitude to money changed. Of course, I wanted to have lots in my bank each month, but when I needed to, I could also manage on surprisingly little. I realised how much of my previous salary I'd been spending on things that just didn't matter. I'm very open-minded to my future career. I worked around the arts sector for about 10 years, but I'm now taking a break to work in a different sector, all of which is providing great opportunities to develop other transferable skills. I feel like I could be doing any number of things in the years to come. I have some personal projects I'd like to achieve, but I'm also quite happy to see where the wind takes me. I'm sure there will be challenges ahead, but I'm confident that I can get through them again. List out all of your transferable skills, from photocopying to Photoshop. You'll be surprised what you're really able to offer a company. Think from the employer's perspective. You could get a candidate with years' worth of experience, but if they're miserable and a terrible team player, this is a much more costly problem than teaching someone how to use some software. So are you approachable, responsible, professional? These are great qualities to highlight in an application where you don't necessarily meet all the requirements. Keep your eye open for opportunities. I worked with my friend on a one-day event that turned into a 6-month job further down the line. The company I work at now started 10 years ago as one man's eBay account. Try and network as much as possible. It can be difficult, but it also often pays off. If you're applying on Indeed.com or similar, employers can automatically sift applications by those that took the time to answer the short questions. So if you've uploaded your CV and are just hitting apply, you might automatically be going into the reject pile. Take the time to fill in what is asked of you, or better yet, seek out the employer away from Indeed.com and email them directly. Believe in yourself, but never brag. Confidence is like seasoning. Too little or too much often ruins the rest of the dish.
Thank you to Liz for sharing her inspiring story. What I really love about Liz's story is how something that could have been seen as a negative of having to take any job that came up actually was the thing that enabled her to see the broad spectrum of what was available for her and just how talented and how many skills she really had. Liz also touches on something that I think is really important to remember, that often if we don't get a job, it doesn't necessarily mean that we're not good enough, but it just means it wasn't the right job for us. And in doing so, Liz really learned to not take rejection so personally. Next up, we'll hear from redundancy mentor at Another Door and author of Why Losing Your Job Could Be the Best Thing That Ever Happened to You, Eleanor Tweddell. Eleanor will share her thoughts on Liz's story and what advice she'd give people going through similar challenges. Eleanor, thank you very much for joining us on the show.
Hi, hello.
Hello. So we're going to be talking about Liz's story. We heard a lot, didn't we, of her talking about how she really didn't want to ask for help. It was kind of like that feeling of, oh, am I giving up? Is it a weakness if I ask for help? I imagine this can be something that's quite common in people. But what's the impact, and how can we kind of find that kind of balance of, you know, being independent, but also knowing that we can't always do it ourselves? What would your advice be to people who kind of don't want to ask for help?
Yeah, such a good one, isn't it? Such a good topic. I think there's two things that struck me, which made me think. One is, I think when we've been in corporate or kind of, you know, those sort of professional roles, we're almost subliminally trained that asking for help is viewed as a weakness, because we should know the answers. We're being paid to know the answers. That's what we think.
Yeah.
So to unwire that, after you lose your job, you want to do something different. You're almost unwiring something rather than kind of building on something and growing into something or using a skill set that you've already got. It's a whole new thing you're trying to learn, and not just learn, you're having to undo first.
Okay.
So that's, I think, what I've sensed from that. So I would say recognize it as that. Recognize that asking for help is not that straightforward. And I think we see a lot of headlines at the moment, don't we? Of like, go and talk to someone, go and ask for help. But it's just not that simple.
Okay.
Because you're trying to work out, well, one, get the confidence up to ask for help. Two, what am I asking for? I don't actually know sometimes, you know, what am I asking for help?
Yeah.
So who do I need to ask for help for? There's so many more questions in that. So I think it comes back down to actually asking for help is the sort of action that you take at the end of giving yourself a bit of time to think things through. So if you create a bit more space, and I think actually Liz kind of gave that example of she did do that for a bit on her own. Just, okay, what am I wanting out of this? What's making me feel stuck? Why do I feel like I'm just frozen here? And doing real deep thinking. And I don't mean like sitting for weeks on a beach. Wouldn't that be nice?
That would be nice.
But I don't mean that. I mean like just 20 minutes a day of just sitting with that question with nothing else going on around you. Just going, what am I actually stuck on? Okay. I think to a bit more clarity on then, okay, what's the question that I need to ask? And then who is the best person?
Okay.
And then that gives you by default the confidence to approach. So when we run, say, Another Door sessions, free sessions that people can jump on and come and ask us questions, a lot of the time people have already done that thinking. And they're like, well, I think I'm stuck at this point. I don't know how to start this. It's a more specific question that they're asking. And the more specific you can get with your questions, the better the quality of receiving the answer is going to be more useful to you.
Yeah. Okay. That's really interesting. So is there any other kind of tips around, you said, doing that thinking, what is it you're wanting to know, or where is it you're stuck? What is the way then, I guess, in that in between of getting the right question, that you can get the right answer in response, but also being able to identify who that person is? Is there any tips around questioning, like effective questions?
Back at you. You're the great question asker. But no, I think you're all right. And especially when you're trying to do it on your own. Obviously, when you work with a coach or a mentor, that's the very thing that they're doing. So if you've got that gift of you've signed up to someone, or you've got, the organization has given you coaching, that's the best place to start, because that is their job. So they'll navigate you through all of that stuff. So that's kind of like the premium version, if you could say, of how you do it. But if you're not in that position and you're doing it on your own, I would say sit with the question that I talked about, what's making me feel stuck, and ask why 5 times after it.
Okay.
So if you say, I'm feeling stuck, write it down, all the stuff that's coming out, because this, because that, then stop and then say, yeah, but why? Like, you be like that child, the child, why?
Okay.
Why?
Yeah.
Like continually asking why. You will get deeper and deeper into really, really why is it making you stuck? What's the real basic reason of this feeling?
Mm-hmm.
And then from that, you'll be able to identify, well, who's the best person to approach? Do I need actual professional help? And there's all sorts of coaches and counselors and all sorts of people out there that can help. Mm-hmm. And they're, often they're more affordable than people feel. They are. So, but if you need to be specific, if you're genuinely feeling like, I'm just not stuck, I'm actually depressed, that's where you get to, then find specific help and reach out to people specifically saying, I feel this, I feel that. If it's more the other way, like, I'm just stuck because I want to start this business, I'm really clear on, what it is, but where do I start? Then look for people who've either done it before, like, so they're kind of people who role model, or you could then look for business mentoring, business coaching. So I think that's just challenging yourself more on what the reality is of the why. That you're feeling stuck, and really deep on that, you will get a little bit more direction on okay, who do I reach out for? I will give you an example of where I did it wrong. I thought, I need to ask for help, I need to start a business, I need to ask for help. So I signed up to a business coach in maybe the first 2 months of just kind of thinking this thing. Mm-hmm. And it was the wrong business coach, because he specialized in scaling business. I didn't even have a business. I just wanted a business. Yeah. It was just like the most painful couple of sessions where then we both agreed, this isn't probably quite right, is it? Not quite in this right space. So frustrating. I just didn't do that deeper, but what is really getting me stuck? And really, I should have got to the point of saying, I'm stuck because I desperately want to do something new. I don't know where to start. I need somebody to give me guidance on the basics of where to start even thinking about a business.
Okay.
So it's just that deeper thinking.
Yeah. And I like how kind of, even though, it might have cost you a bit of money and a bit of time, ultimately even though you went down the wrong route in terms of your choice of business mentor, it enabled you to see, well, actually, that's not what I need. But what I do need is the how to get started. And so even those false starts can provide you some answers in, okay, I can take out that whole big chunk of the pie of questions because that's not relevant right now. Okay, very cool. So I was going to ask you about kind of, breaking this negative cycle of kind of rejection and the confidence and productivity, but that you kind of touched on it, I think, a bit with when you were saying about, okay, am I struggling with how to start a business, or am I struggling with maybe the depression, in which case you go and see the most relevant person based on what you're kind of looking at. But is there anything else you'd add in terms of if people get stuck in a negative cycle?
It's kind of I guess it's a bit of a cliche, but it really helped me, and it really helped me reframe how I felt about rejection. It means that you're trying, and it really does, because you can't be rejected unless you've tried something. People who live in the comfort zone of not doing new stuff and not getting out there and it's just all comfortable tend not to experience rejection. you know, what are you getting rejected from? So I think you've got to reframe it as it's fine. And there's a lot of kind of writing about rejection is just a redirection. It's just redirecting you back onto the path you're meant to be. Yeah. And you can feel like that's a bit like, yeah, all right, great, thanks. But on the other hand, actually just accept that. That's quite a nice way of thinking about it, isn't it? And in the end, I stopped being cynical about all this stuff, because I was at one point like, yeah, all right, I actually wanted that job. And then when I thought about it, I was like, no, you didn't. It's true. It was sending you away. Like, that job didn't happen for you because it's not what you wanted to do. It's sending you, go away. It's not for you right now. So it was actually true. So embracing a little bit of that and just tuning into like, okay, that wasn't for me. Get back on path. What do I want? How can I refocus my energy? Again, it's that keep focusing on the future. And rejection, again, it's your inner voice that's telling you, oh, this is awful. Oh my God, they hated me. Like, oh, just stop. Just stop telling yourself that's fine. It's just not meant to be. It just didn't come together at that point. The next thing will be even better. Okay. So, yeah, I think it's reframing how you feel about failure and rejection and fear into, actually, this is just part of me moving on.
Okay, nice. And is there any other things you noticed or wanted to comment about Liz's story that you think are kind of relevant or interesting?
I think the whole thing about I kind of resonated with that, ask for help, the bit about not wanting to because you're showing weakness. That's the bit I really feel is the important message. I think that we all live in that space more than we admit sometimes. And so I think just remembering that you're not alone. You don't have to be alone. You go through all of those feelings, and again, it could be all sorts of different mixed feelings. That point of feeling like, well, it's weakness if I ask for help or if I say how I'm feeling. Embrace it like the change curve when we're kind of going through grief and we're having to accept and be in a bit of denial, and you get low about it and you come out of it. That's kind of what came to my mind when I was reading. You kind of got to go through that curve in your own way, and then actually apply the real curve, which I kind of talk about in the book, which is more like a bowl of spaghetti. Okay. And that's again what I sort of sensed when I was reading, when I was thinking about the story. It's like one day you can feel angry, next minute you can feel alone, next minute you can feel excited, that's kind of the reality of it. And at some point you might just say, right, I can't move forward now, without just saying, right, can you just help me in this? And it's a positive thing, not a weakness thing. It means that you're in the right frame of mind to say, yeah, let's do this, let's bring it on. So actually reframing, it's not a weakness, far from it. It means that you've got the strength to go, right, can you just help me with that, please? And when you start looking around at people who've been really successful around you and online and all the rest of it, you see, oh my God, they're just asking questions every 2 minutes. So if you start thinking about it, you look and you think, they have moved like 100 steps forward because they've just gone, can you just clarify that? Can you just ask this? Can I just get that? Meanwhile, we're all sitting here going, well, I'm not asking a question, that looks like I'm weak. Definitely. So it's sort of like that reframing piece that really, struck me, that we actually all have elements of, if we admit.
Brilliant. The power of questions, eh? Awesome. Eleanor, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That was Eleanor Tweddell, author of Why Losing Your Job Could Be the Best Thing That Ever Happened to You. For more tips, advice and support from Eleanor and stories featured in her book, head over to anotherdoor.co.uk. Thank you for watching When Laid Off, Paid Off, Redundancy Success Stories. I hope you managed to find some hope and inspiration from this episode. I'll see you next time.